December 22nd, 1995, New York City. The Beacon Theater. Outside, the air was sharp enough to cut. Inside, it was fire. 20,000 people packed so tightly that breathing felt like a choice you had to make deliberately. Tupac Amaru Shakur had been out of prison for exactly 2 months, and he had poured every one of those days into this night. This wasn't a concert. This was a declaration. They called it the Redemption Tour. Tupac hated that word. Redemption. Like he had something to answer for. Like the system that put him in that cell deserved an apology in return. He wasn't there to be redeemed. He was there to remind everyone and himself that they hadn't broken him. The set had been flawless. Dear Mama had just ended, and the arena was still vibrating from it. Tupac stood at the edge of the stage, holding the microphone loosely, scanning the crowd the way he always did, not performing the connection, actually feeling it. Every face, every fist in the air, every person who had waited for him to come back. He thought to himself, this is the only place I've ever felt safe. He didn't know that feeling was about to be taken from him. But nobody in that arena knew what was already waiting for him backstage. April 1995. Clinton Correctional Facility, Dannemora, New York. Tupac believed in that marriage the way a drowning man believes in the rope he's holding. Keisha Morris had been there through the trial, through the conviction, through the nightmare of being caged inside a system that had already decided his guilt before a single word of testimony. She wrote letters. She answered phone calls. She showed up. In a world where everything had been stripped from him, freedom, movement, dignity, Keisha was the one constant. And so when she agreed to marry him behind those walls, in that sterile visiting room with correctional officers watching from every angle, Tupac felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. I got somebody who's really down for me, he told a close friend during one of his monitored calls. Whatever they throw at me, I can handle it, because I'm not alone. That belief carried him through every night of his sentence. Every hour of staring at a ceiling, wondering how his life had collapsed so fast. He would think about coming home to her. He would think about what normal felt like. He held on to that image like it was the only oxygen in the room. He had no idea what was happening on the other side of those walls. What you're about to read isn't just about infidelity. It's about a calculated deception that required planning, discipline, and looking a man you claim to love directly in the eyes and lying. Backstage, seconds after Dear Mama ended, Tupac was reaching for a towel when one of the crew members approached him. The man looked uncomfortable. His hands were doing something strange, gripping the edge of a yellow manila envelope like he didn't quite want to let it go, but also couldn't stand to hold it any longer. Someone dropped this off, the crew member said. They said it was urgent. They said you needed to see it before the next song. Tupac looked at the envelope. No name on the front, no return address, just a single handwritten line. You deserve to know the truth. His instinct told him to set it down. Wait until after the show. But something about the weight of it, not the physical weight, something else, made him pull it open. The first photograph fell out. Then the second. Then a stack of them. The towel in Tupac's hand hit the floor. He didn't notice. The photographs were dated. They were clear. They were taken at restaurants, hotels, private apartments, nightclub booths, and in every one of them was Keisha, with men who were not her husband. Multiple men, multiple occasions, multiple months of his incarceration. But what stopped his breath wasn't the count, it was the dates. Some of these photographs had been taken days, sometimes hours before Keisha's prison visits, which meant she had been with another man, and then walked into that visiting room, sat across the table from him, and looked him in the eyes. He stood there for a long time. The band was waiting. The crowd was waiting. 20,000 people on the other side of that curtain chanting his name. Tupac gathered the photographs, slid them back into the envelope, took one breath, and walked back out onto the stage. Let's stop, because what he did next had never been done before in the history of live performance. The crowd roared when he stepped back into the light. He didn't raise his fist, didn't smile, didn't feed off the energy the way he always did. He just stood there, holding the microphone. Quiet. The crowd felt it immediately. Something was different. The air changed the way it changes right before a storm. That particular shift in pressure that every living thing registers before the mind catches up to it. "I need to talk to y'all about something," Tupac said. His voice was low, controlled. The sound system carried every word to the back of the room. "Everyone in here tonight supported me. Through the trial, through the prison time, through all of it. And I love y'all for that. I need y'all to know that." Silence. 20,000 people listening without a single voice. "But because you supported me, you deserve the truth. And I've always believed that if you love people, you give them the truth, no matter how much it costs you." He held up the envelope, slowly, so the whole room could see it. 7 months ago, I married a woman named Keisha Morris while I was incarcerated. I married her because I loved her, because I believed she was someone who would stand with me through the worst thing that ever happened to me. A pause. Long enough to feel it. I just found out that was only half the story. And then in the VIP section, someone stood up. Keisha Morris was there that night. She had come as the supportive wife, the woman standing behind her man at his triumphant return. She had dressed for it. She had planned for it. She had not planned for this. The spotlight swung toward the VIP section. The cameras followed. Her face appeared on the screens above the stage, and the arena understood in an instant what was happening. Keisha. The way Tupac said her name, not a greeting, a summons. "Come up here." Nobody moved for a long moment. Then Keisha stood. She walked toward the stage slowly, each step deliberate, like a person who understands exactly where they are going and can't stop themselves from getting there. When she reached the stage, she and Tupac stood facing each other. The distance between them was small. Everything else was enormous. "Pac," she said quietly. "We don't have to do this here. This is exactly where we do this," Tupac said. Not angry, colder than anger. These people celebrated our marriage. They believed in what we represented. They deserved to know what they were actually celebrating. He looked at her steadily. No performance, no theatrics. Just a man asking a question he already knew the answer to. "One question, Keisha. In front of all these people, were you faithful to our marriage while I was in prison?" The arena held its breath. 20,000 people waiting. And Keisha's answer was nothing like anyone expected. She didn't deny it. "Hank, I was lonely," she said. Her voice was unsteady, but she kept going. "I was scared. I didn't know if you were ever coming home. I didn't know how to be married to someone who wasn't there." "I know," Tupac said. Just those 2 words. Patient, devastating. "I know you were lonely. I was there, remember? I was the one in the cell. I know exactly what lonely feels like." He paused. "But that's not what I asked you." Another silence. Then, "No," Keisha said. "I wasn't faithful." The arena erupted, not with celebration but with something rawer than that. People were shouting Tupac's name. Some were crying. Some were on their feet, not knowing what to do with the energy inside their bodies. Tupac raised one hand. Quiet came back. Fast. "How many men?" he asked. His voice hadn't changed. Still that same controlled, even tone. Keisha looked down. "I can't remember exactly." Tupac repeated it slowly. "You can't remember exactly." He let those 4 words sit in the air. He didn't need to add anything. The crowd felt the weight of them. Not a momentary mistake. Not a lapse of judgment on a bad night. Too many to count. Too routine to track. "And the visits," he said, his voice dropping just slightly. "You were coming to see me in that prison, sitting across that table, looking me in the face, telling me you loved me." He took one breath. "You were doing all of this right before those visits?" Keisha didn't answer, but she didn't deny it either. "That's what I thought," Tupac said. "Here's what no one saw coming." Tupac didn't scream. He didn't break down. What he did instead was far more powerful. Tupac looked down at his left hand. The wedding band was simple. Silver. It had been put on his finger in a prison visiting room, with correctional officers watching. No ceremony, no reception, no flowers, but it had meant everything to him because of what it represented. The idea that even inside the worst experience of his life, there was someone on the other side who had chosen him. You know what the hardest part of being in that cell was? He said. Not to the crowd. To Keisha. It wasn't the conditions. It wasn't the isolation. It wasn't even the injustice of being there in the first place. He paused. It was not being able to protect the people I loved, not being able to hold them down the way a man is supposed to. He looked at her, and I held on to you because I thought, at least she's there. At least she's waiting. At least that part is real. Keisha was crying. I'm sorry, Pac. I am sorry. I wasn't strong enough to handle it. I know that. I know I failed you. You didn't just fail me, Tupac said, and his voice finally cracked, just once, just for a second. You took the one thing I had left. You took the belief that I wasn't completely alone, and you used it to hold me still while you lived whatever life you wanted. He slid the ring off his finger, held it up between two fingers, so the entire arena could see it. I made a vow when I put this on. You made one too. He threw it, hard, into the crowd, a silver arc under the stage lights, and then gone, swallowed by 20,000 hands in the dark. Nobody caught it on purpose. Nobody needed to. And then Tupac turned back to the microphone and said something that nobody in that building ever forgot. This marriage is over, he said. Not when the lawyers file the paperwork. Not when the court signs anything. Right now, tonight, in front of all of you. Keisha stood at the edge of the stage. She looked at him one last time. He didn't look back. She walked off. The sound of her heels on the stage floor was the only thing anyone could hear. Then nothing. 20,000 people in absolute silence. Tupac held the microphone, looked out at the crowd, and when he spoke again, he wasn't performing. He wasn't playing to the room. He was just a man who had been broken in a specific way and was choosing out loud in front of the world not to stay broken. You want to know what I learned in prison? You survive by holding on to something real. I chose wrong. I chose something that looked real but wasn't. And I'm not going to pretend that doesn't hurt, because it does. But I'm not going to let it define me either. He looked across the crowd. They put me in a cell. They took years from me. They tried to make me less than what I am. And I'm still standing here. Some woman deciding she didn't want to be faithful isn't going to be the thing that finally takes me down. I'm too real for that. He paused. Then quietly, only God can judge me. The arena exploded. Tupac finished the concert that night. 2 more hours. Every song felt different after what had just happened. Sharper, more necessary. Like music that understood it was doing something more important than entertaining people. The divorce from Keisha Morris was finalized in 1996. In later interviews, Keisha spoke carefully. About loneliness, about impossible circumstances, about decisions she regretted. She never talked directly about that night at the Beacon Theater. Some things can't be explained after you've already been asked to explain them in front of 20,000 witnesses. For Tupac, the night deepened something that was already fractured in him. People close to him said he became more guarded after that, more watchful, less willing to give the kind of full, unguarded trust that the marriage had represented. His music in that final year, recorded at an extraordinary pace, as if he felt the clock running, carried the weight of a man who had learned something irreversible about what people are capable of. But he never went quiet, never turned inward in a way that shut the world out. If anything, the betrayal seemed to push him toward more honesty, not less, more urgency, more words, more truth. The people who were at the Beacon Theater that night still talk about it. Not just about the ring being thrown, not just about the confrontation. They talk about the moment after, when Tupac stood at that microphone and chose very deliberately not to collapse. Tupac Amaru Shakur died on September 13, 1996, in Las Vegas. He was 25 years old. In the months between that December concert and his death, He recorded enough music to fill years of posthumous releases. The words never stopped coming, because some people don't just leave behind a body of work. They leave behind proof that it's possible to be completely destroyed and still refuse to be finished. That night at the Beacon Theater was proof. If this story moved you, hit that like. For more untold stories like this, subscribe and drop a comment. What would you have done on that stage?